Britain's local elections are tomorrow. Let's check in on the reform campaign.
Hello, sir. Reform.
Enoch Powell, if you can hear me, please give me the based right-wing party our enemies think that we have. Dear God, this is so poor. And this is from multiple angles, by the way. Montgomery Toms has asked, half sarcastically, whether or not the Green Party has done a coalition with Reform, that the giveaway is that this is in Hindi rather than Urdu, but you would be forgiven for making that mistake. Was this what you voted for, patriots? The Hindu Nationalist Party? I mean, Reform have so successfully reconfigured the Conservative Party under a teal banner that they have now incorporated the Indian ethnic nepotism on display that allowed Priti Patel to become the Home Secretary and Rishi Sunak to become the Prime Minister, as celebrated by the Modi regime and their press outlets as an Indian sun rising over the former empire. They were campaigning with Sikh and Hindu manifestos, and now, given that the bandwagon with momentum seems to be Reform, all of the strivers of the subcontinent have jumped to board Reform rather than the Tories. And again, they would be forgiven for mistaking the parties, given Reform themselves now have so many Tories it's basically indistinguishable, including Layla Cunningham, who was leading this procession from Camp of the Saints, who decided to come out and defend this, saying this was a great day with great people in Brent. I want a London where your future is not decided by your skin colour, religion or postcode, but by your hard work, talent and determination. I mean, London, by definition, would be defined by your postcode, because there's only a definite number of postcodes in London boroughs, but by the by, she says, and what unites us is not grievance politics, but pride in this country, pride in our freedoms, and pride in being British. London should be a city where your path in life is not decided for you at birth. All of this is just incantations, liberal mysticisms. I have a dream. I am singing the lyrics of John Lennon's Imagine. I was so mad I just punched my PC by accident. All of this is just saying, I would like your capital city to become a colourblind, meritocratic economic zone, indistinct of what people actually believe in their hearts, what their religion is, what their culture is, what their background is. I'm just going to redefine your identity, British, to include me. Let me explain how your identity includes me, sir. A city where patriotic people from every community can rise, achieve and fulfil their potential through hard work and perseverance, supporting controlled immigration and secure borders, does not make you anti-immigrant. Millions of people came to Britain legally, contributed massively, and are proud to be British. Layla, I don't care if these people were here legally. I didn't vote to move to India. If I wanted to live in India, I would have moved there, but instead, India moved here. And I'm sorry, any of these people may be individually pleasant, but in aggregated numbers, it turns my country into an unfamiliar, unrecognisable place. And as I pointed out in a ratio that took no time at all, we are well within our rights to say we don't want to be governed by foreigners. And that includes Layla Cunningham, who is an Egyptian Muslim. We are well within our rights to say that I don't want our politics to become a battleground for the sons and daughters of the Indian subcontinent to advantage their respective nations, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or, in the case of Zia Yusuf, Sri Lanka. It's very conspicuous that those nations were left off of the visa bans applied to nations demanding reparations. Weird how Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India were not included on there. And also, if anyone can be British, then being British means nothing, because the entire world is just a British person in waiting. If there are no qualifiers for who can be British, if it's not based on your ancestry, or it's not based on your beliefs, which are downstream of your religion and culture, but Layla Cunningham says you can be patriotic and British no matter what your religion and culture is, then what does being British mean? There is no enforcement cost to this civic definition of Britishness. It is incoherent. If I am just as British as this Hindu procession with, I'm sorry to be rude, but walking around yelling in barely intelligible English, reform, reform. If they're as British as me, then Britain itself means nothing. It's just a job centre or a bus station for anyone who would like to plunder our dwindling largesse and send it back home in remittances. Like, what's the average remittance rate of this crowd? Is that to the benefit of the British people that Reform is meant to be representing? And actually, I think you'll find the majority of Reform's base don't want more legal migration. They don't think, as Nigel Farage said back in January at the World Economic Forum, that we've left India behind. They think 250,000 Indians a year under Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, and on, is a form of exploitation, and it's something they would like to see undone. They would like to see lots of these people sent home, actually, and, you know, good luck to them if they're really building businesses and they are patriotic and they want to participate in politics. They can do that in the country that reflects their interests, rather than in mine, because my country is not an opportunity zone for everyone around the world. Our immigration policy should not be aimed at trying to gather all of the nice people in the world in one place, because the likelihood of doing so is very, very small, and Britain is not a repository for nice people, no matter how nice they are. It's a home. Just as my house is filled with my family, not being a boarding house for everyone I consider nice, my country is also not just a place for all the world's nice people to stay. And that's buying into the premise that these people are even nice, rather than just jumping aboard a political bandwagon in order to advantage their ethnic and religious community. And we know this is the case as well, because Richard Tice, at the same time, went to a gurdwara and wore a mock turban. I'm sure my fellow poor benighted brothers in the Anglosphere in Canada and Australia are getting heavy Pierre Poilievre and Peter Dutton vibes from this. But it just seems that the, quote, centre-right parties are obsessed with prostrating themselves before the colonies that we've imported from our former colony. And I saw people saying, well, Sikhs and Hindus are actually on your side because they're against Islamism. I mean, number one, you've literally got a Muslim leading the procession down the street in Layla Cunningham. But number two, no, they're on their own side. They're on the side of Sikh Indians or Hindu Indians. And I think we should take our own side as well. Like, we should be able to represent ourselves in our own politics. And I'm sorry, I'll play this video, but how is this not sectarianism? Is it only sectarianism when the Greens do it to Pakistani Muslims who don't like Jews very much? But it's not sectarianism when Reform do it for Jews, Sikhs and Hindus? I mean, it's so tiresome.
Today was not just a visit. It was a moment of understanding.
Look at my patriotic right-wing party, dog. What is this?
Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, along with members of the team, visited the Gurdwara Sahib. And from the very first moment, there was a sense of respect, humility, and genuine connection.
Yes, that's because he is coming to your space and deferring to your culture, your people. It should be completely the other way around. Sorry, again, these Sikhs might well be nice people, but you shouldn't be taking indigenous politicians to your religious buildings, having them wear your religious garb, and then praising them for their humility and respect, their subservience to what you exalt as supreme and good. It just shouldn't be the case.
As is tradition, Rajbir Singh, Councillor Prish Sharma, and myself, along with the Gurdwara Sangat, warmly welcomed Richard Tice. And before entering into the Gurdwara, we tied a head covering on him.
Are we serious? Oh, come on! Like, I don't have anything additional to add here. I don't have any cutting analysis. This is just so absurd. I'm not voting for this. I'm not doing it. I've voted for Tice before. I voted for Tice in a 2021 by-election, not knowing that this is the kind of circus that he would put on were he given a parliamentary seat. This is just embarrassing. Right, so that's the legal migrants. What about the illegal ones? What do Reform want to do with them? Well, we've seen Reform renew their promise of mass deportations after Nigel Farage was dragged kicking and screaming to adopt the policy by Donald Trump and the online right. And now, Reform have come up with a novel solution as to where to detain these men while they're awaiting their deportation. They're going to put them in what they promise are secure detention camps, which they can't leave, specifically in green constituencies. So they're going to punish, largely, young women for voting green by putting who they know to be foreign rapists who have broken into the country because they have been promised white women by the people smugglers. They're going to punish those young women by putting those foreign rapists next door to them. Here's Mohammed Zia Yusuf telling you how he's going to house a rapist next to your family if you happen to live in a green constituency, even if you didn't vote green.
This is Zach Polanski, aka the Breast Whisperer.
We came to you and said, can you make my breast bigger through hypnotherapy? And you said, yes.
But my
Okay, I mean, don't make me try to like him.
mind over memory is just one of Zach's many mad ideas. As illegal migrants continue to turn up on our shores, Zach and his Green Party say they want Britain to have no borders at all. Now it's clear that the failed Uni-Party era is over.
Yeah, because Reform have reassembled the Uniparty, like a literal Uniparty, in their party by taking in Green, Tory, Lib Dem and Labour defectors, and recycling Boris Johnson's own cabinet ministers while promising to abolish ILR and deport the Boris wave. So yeah, the failed Uniparty is over because they've got brand new branding with Reform.
And there is a battle for the soul of our country.
That's a profoundly American line, by the way, and a lot of this comes off as what Zoe Gardner would call the yankification of our politics. And I'm like, yes, I agree, Zoe, de-yankification now, which means no, we're not a nation of immigrants. And the party that you support, the Greens, keep casting us as one. But at the same time, this is a profoundly American-style policy. And I had American friends texting me after this policy was announced, asking, why do you oppose this? Because it's basically the policy that Ron DeSantis and Governor Greg Abbott of Texas conducted while the Biden administration were in power, while there was no realistic prospect of deporting the immigrants inflicted on them by an open southern border, when they bust those illegal migrants to Martha's Vineyard and imposed them upon the Liberals who were voting for open borders but had a very little prospect in their gated communities of ever suffering the consequences of their luxury beliefs. Problem is, that's when they weren't in power. That's under a federal system. And that's in a system where Republican and Democrat party identities are deeply entrenched, antagonistic, to the extent to where they're prosecuting their political opponents and there's the growing risk of a national divorce or some sort of irreconcilable second American Civil War. I don't think we want to get there. It could be that we're already in that place, but I don't think we are. And I don't think as well that you should punish the people that voted against this in green constituencies, as Zia Yusuf is about to mention, like Brighton, where there are reform branches, there are patriots who want to see a reform government elected and want to take their area back rather than surrendering it as some foregone conclusion that it's just going to be an occupied territory by demented progressives and the anti-white minorities that have formed the Green Coalition.
Between Reform and the Greens. That's why today we announce an important new policy. In order to deport all illegal migrants in Britain, we're going to need to detain tens of thousands at a time. Migrants will not be able to leave these detention centres, and each will be held there for a couple of weeks before being deported. So here's our promise. A Reform government will not put any migrant detention centres in any constituency with a Reform MP. We will not put them where Reform controls the council. And of the remaining areas, we will prioritise Green parliamentary constituencies and Green-controlled councils to put those migrant detention centres. That means areas like right here in Brighton.
That's less than a week after a woman in Brighton was abducted and raped by two Egyptian and an Iranian asylum seeker, fake refugee. They filmed it on Snapchat, and that was the famous image of one of them looking like the mouth of Sauron. So less than a week after that, Reform promised to disperse the illegal migrants in detention centres that they promise are secure, we'll get to that in a moment, in those same constituencies. This just codes as vindictive. I'm sorry, it's not making the point that they think it's making. They think it's making the point of, well, you asked for open borders. Hey, Greens, you're going to get them. Oh, you don't want them? Aren't you hypocrites? I mean, this is exactly what Zia Yusuf posted when Reform got quite a lot of backlash from both left and right on this. He says, I must say I am shocked at how many of the highly virtuous and kind left-wing media and establishment politicians have revealed they view living near asylum seekers as punishment. Whoever would have thought? Well, you. And so this is why a lot of people were put off by this, because Reform acknowledged that a lot of these men are rapists and murderers, like the killed Rhiannon Sky White, or the Afghan that murdered Wayne Broadhurst in the middle of the day, which, you know, Nigel Farage didn't speak about, but he did speak about the Golders Green appalling terror attack. And that's mainly because, of course, Robert Jenrick celebrated the fact that those Afghans came in as a national project. So after that, after recognising that these men are violent criminals that prey on men, women and children, Reform are now using the threat, the implied threat, that we're going to stick rapists in your area to punish the Greens. And I'm sorry, it goes beyond just saying, well, you guys are hypocrites. You're actually kind of gross for using the implication that you're knowingly deploying rapists in Green constituencies to punish your political opponents. Because as Zia's saying, aha, we've got you in a catch-22. You guys are saying it's a punishment. It's like, no, you guys are saying it's a punishment. You know it's a punishment. We all know it's a punishment. That's why we don't want these men in our country. And so, rather than trying to target constituencies that didn't vote for you, rather than inflicting these men as a kind of criminal bioweapon on constituencies that have your own voters but they're in a minority, why don't you just do it according to logistical concerns, like closest proximity to an airport? I mean, or put them on a military base, preferably disused, but of course with armed, army-trained guards, that perhaps have their own runways so they can conduct charter flights, so they can't be obstructed, so you aren't relying on the cooperation of a commercial airline. All of these things are much more sensible. What about the Nightingale-style hospital detention centres that Zia proposed in his recent deportations announcement video? Why don't you just knock them up on remote brownfield sites far away from civilian housing? And by the way, if you think I'm being conspiratorial about them imposing these detention centres on dense, urban populated areas, remember two things. Number one, Green Party constituencies are largely progressive towns like Bristol or Brighton, cities rather, or university cities. Like the upcoming ones are going to be like Canterbury, possibly Cambridge. Do they deserve that? Should we house these foreign criminals in our historic cities just because a bunch of students decided to vote for the Green Party when they're going to leave the area in a couple of years? And also, in case you thought I was making this up, Richard Tice responded to Dan Hodges of the Mail. Dan Hodges said, one other thing, if Nigel Farage thinks he's going to be able to build a migrant detention centre in the middle of Lewisham or Hackney, or, you know, Greenwich, he's in for a nasty shock. Tice said challenge accepted. So they're going to stick them in the heart of London. If you think about this for 5 minutes, it's just not going to work. Like, how are you going to build a giant migrant detention centre for tens of thousands of men in the middle of London and make sure that they are secure? Because if Reform UK are willing to run the Boris wave as their candidates, if this is the kind of thing that Layla Cunningham wants London to be, these are the kinds of people, then what's going to stop them from allowing them to be the security guards at the secure migrant detention centres? Are they just going to be staffed by the kinds of urban scarecrows, the Indians in the high-vis jackets that we see milling about at the front of Tesco's and M&S when some urban scholar decides to raid the shelves and just run out and not be tackled to the ground? So how secure are they going to be? And also, should one break out, even if they are very secure, because you've chosen to deploy them in Green constituencies, when the inevitable rape or murder happens, that's on Reform. If it was just a logistical concern, for example, putting them on a remote military base, putting them on a brownfield site, and just trying to get rid of them as quick as possible, then it wouldn't code as vindictive. And you wouldn't have to own the fact that someone suffered because of your policy. It would be purely the fault of the criminal migrant. But when you say we're going to put them in dense urban areas because we want to punish our political opponents with the hypothetical inevitable consequences of their awful politics, then should that inevitable horror be inflicted on a young woman, then they're just immediately going to write headlines saying it's reforms rape gangs. And by the way, this is also a terrible idea, because if you put them in dense green constituencies, then you're never going to get the vans to and from the detention centres, because you have the surrounding area full of eager activists willing to block the road, stand in front of the detention centre gates, agitate, possibly break in and compromise the security. So you're just going to make it much harder than it needs to be to actually conduct the deportations. If you did this in a remote area where the men would be of no risk, where you'd need less security, where it's less hard to build, and where it's harder for protesters and astroturfed agitators to get out to and disrupt the deportations, then this would cause fewer headaches, fewer headlines, fewer opportunities for Nigel Farage to crumble under pressure as he already has, and fewer opportunities for your enemies to score wins and frustrate your agenda. This is all just a foreseeable rake that Reform seemed to be intent on stepping on. And Farage was celebrating this as you get what you vote for. Actually, I don't want to give the Greens what they voted for. I don't want to allow a bunch of young women who've been poisoned against their own safety and self-interest to vote themselves into being sexually abused. Like, I don't think we should give them what they vote for. I think we should take a paternalistic approach to this and say, no, the adults are in the room now, we're going to get this done. It's going to be grim, it's going to be difficult, it's not actually going to be pleasant hauling a bunch of people onto planes, no matter how evil they are, but it's necessary for us to regain our country. This is one of the things that the Trump administration got wrong when mass deportations were in full swing, and it's kind of the reason they've been ramped down, is they were celebratory about it. They were posting hype edits, they were doing the Ghibli memes, they lined the White House lawn with the mugshots of deported criminals. And don't get me wrong, I want those people deported. But all it did was agitate the left-wing base that you failed to crack down on in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder in cities like Minneapolis and Chicago. And then, because Trump doesn't like bad press, and because he isn't actually as authoritarian as made out, he wasn't willing to crack down on the protests when they inevitably started. And when Nicole Good and Alex Pretty got shot for trying to interfere with the lawful duties of ICE and lethally threatening the ICE officers with a weapon or a car, suddenly Trump didn't stand by the ICE officers, he demanded a drawdown and told congressional Republicans stop saying mass deportations. The same thing's going to happen with Nigel, and Nigel is less strong on this issue than Trump. So mass deportations won't get as far as even the Trump administration did, and under the Trump administration, they haven't gotten very far at all, unfortunately. And so it's no shock that when Matt Goodwin, for example, failed Gorton and Denton candidate, says vote Green, get illegal migrant detention centres in your area. If you want open borders, you can now live with the consequences and joy. It looks like revenge for Gorton and Denton not voting for Reform and voting Green instead. And it also looks like an unjust punishment inflicted on the nearly 11,000 Reform voters that actually showed up and voted for Matt Goodwin despite his terrible candidacy. So this all just codes as spiteful, unnecessary, and you can see how this is just going to destroy the mass deportations agenda. At the same time that the party is promoting foreign nationals and legal immigrants as candidates. I mean, in my local area, I'm not going to tell people not to vote for Reform in your local area if they're the best candidate at the local elections tomorrow. But in my area, I'm not voting for Reform because in my very homogeneous white British area, the only foreign candidate on the ballot is with Reform. And it's because they're desperate not to be called racist. And because they're desperate not to be called racist, the moment that they deploy these migrant detention centres in green areas, and there's a photo of a crying migrant, and the Greens lay down in front of the vans to stop them getting anywhere like they did in Scotland a few years ago, then Reform will just buck under pressure and mass deportations will be done. And then we're just stuck with them. And so it's not surprising that when it codes this vindictive, when it seems unworkable, that Reform's own supporters don't support the policy. YouGov polling finds that only 15% of Reform voters say that it is acceptable for a government to base decisions that affect individual constituencies on which party people in that constituency voted for at the general elections. Like, for example, imposing migrant detention centres on green constituencies. 19% say somewhat acceptable, 15% say somewhat unacceptable, 22% say completely unacceptable, and 29% say don't know. So the vast majority are not in favour of this. That's in reform. The rest of the country also agree that it's not acceptable. But the largest share is, of course, the Greens, saying it's completely unacceptable, and Reform can, do a song and dance about how hypocritical that is. But it's not hypocritical because the Greens don't want any migrant detention centres at all because they want open borders. So of course they don't want migrant detention centres in their constituencies because they don't want the deportations to go ahead. So it's not even hypocritical. So this entire thing is an avoidable blunder. And instead, you can do what is outlined in Restore Britain's Mass Deportations paper by my friend Harrison Pitt on page 97. Quote, every illegal migrant currently in hotel accommodation HMOs must be securely detained in emergency temporary accommodation on Ministry of Defence or government land, as is currently being considered by the Labour government, according to news reports. Now, the Labour government are instead doing Operation Scatter and just equitably redistributing migrants all across the country to make sure we all get enriched by our share of violent diversity. Instead, we can just stick them on government land, on military property, on brownfield sites with security provided by the Ministry of Defence, and just get them gone with minimum fuss. And as for legal migration, Rupert Lowe put a post this morning, because a number of people in Great Yarmouth have been targeted by just outright lies by Reform. We knew they were going to try and do this sort of subterfuge strategy. I got tipped off by some people working in Millbank Tower who were like, look, I work for Reform, I want to make it better, but I didn't sign up for this level of deception. And they weren't very happy that I blew the whistle on their attempt. But what they were going to do is they were going to go down to Great Yarmouth and tell people on the doorstep, well, Restore are actually really far right. They're nasty right-wingers. They want to get rid of every foreigner. Rupert said here, I've spoken to a number of people on the doorstep in Great Yarmouth who have told us that Reform canvassers have been saying, I want to deport every single foreigner living in the country. This seems to be their campaigning line. These are flat-out lies, and it perfectly demonstrates the desperation on show. My policy position on immigration is quite straightforward. Every single illegal immigrant gets deported. I have been consistent on this for a very long time, far before it was fashionable. It's actually one of the reasons why Rupert was expelled by Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage from Reform. We will implement an environment so hostile that many of the illegals will remove themselves. The rest will be forcibly deported. We have published the most comprehensive deportation policy ever released in Britain. We've done our homework. It can be done, and it will be done. It's here, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. Foreign rapists and sex offenders are obviously all gone, including those who enabled their crimes. This was so controversial to Farage and Reform that they tried to put me in prison because of it. Reform had my home raided by armed police because I wanted to deport Pakistani rape gang savages and their accomplice wives. Farage said it was brutal, but it had to be done. His words, grim. Legal immigration. If a migrant is living in Britain and unable to speak English, claims benefits, lives in social housing, hates our way of life, and refuses to work, then they have no reason to be in our country. Reform's going to be short of some canvassers pretty soon. And they should leave. Under a Restore Britain government, millions would. Net negative immigration, severe net negative. The overall number is secondary, the principle comes first. And this is where Rupert makes things very explicit. This is where he divides himself from Reform, who have said they will never do the following policy. We would strip citizenships from Islamic dual nationals who hate us and send them packing. The revocation of British citizenships from dual nationals who wish to kill us will become entirely normal and very common. If those individuals have surrendered their secondary citizenship in an attempt to remain in Britain, we will take whatever steps necessary to reverse that process. It's also eligible for people who have British citizenship but will be eligible for citizenship elsewhere. It's already been done to a British man, like an actual ethnic Englishman, who has been stripped of his citizenship by Shabana Mahmood and stranded in Russia. It happened, by the way, to Shamima Begum, the ISIS bride who only had British citizenship but was eligible by blood for citizenship in Bangladesh. There are lots of people who think and act like Shamima Begum who are eligible for citizenship in, say, Pakistan or even India. They should be stripped of their citizenship and sent home. And this is the door opening to that policy under Restore Britain. He says, refugee status will be revoked from those who have entered the country illegally, and they will be deported back to where they came from or any third-party country. Crucially, the Afghans imported by Reform politicians will be removed, and there will be lots more refugee statuses revised, repealed, and removed going forward. Again, Restore are producing a legal migration report coming soon, also written by Harrison Pitt. It goes about as far as everyone wants. With this basic principle in mind, that would mean millions of foreign nationals leaving the country. For ongoing immigration, we would discriminate. We would implement the red list. If a country is proven to supply us with criminals and freeloaders, we would close off entire visa routes from that country. Sudan, Pakistan, Eritrea, Somalia, to name a few. India is also listed on the red list on Restore Britain's website. Restore Britain will ban legal migration from India. That should be reason to vote for them enough. Like, I'm a single issue voter. I want these people gone. And this is the only party policy promising it. Those ultra-high skilled immigrants who live in our communities, integrate, contribute and belong, they're obviously welcome, as in the people already here, not adding lots more. The only visa that will be eligible to bring people in will be a spousal visa process, which will be simplified, made more affordable for the foreign spouses of British men and women from non-red list countries. Personally, I think it should only be women, and those non-red list countries should be confined to basically Western Europe, the Anglosphere with qualifiers. We don't just want millions of Indians coming from Canada. Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea. That's pretty acceptable. Harrison is currently in the process of drafting a red list, and he will take feedback. We would put the British people first. Quite simple. Is any of this controversial? I think not. Reform can tell their lies to the people of Great Yarmouth. It won't work. And judging by the volume of canvassers that have been going down to Great Yarmouth all week, thousands of people who have just been delivering leaflets and having conversations on the doorstep, the Great Yarmouth First flags that people are flying, and the signs in people's windows. It looks like Great Yarmouth First, as a subsidiary of Restore Britain, will win the council. And that's encouraging, because that's the proving ground for Restore Britain's ground game before a general election, or any by-elections that might come up. And they've done it all by mobilising the British people by promising to represent them, rather than creating a foreign army through sectarian pandering by going to gurdwaras and leading a procession of Hindus down the street with a prospective Egyptian Muslim London mayoral candidate. But the British people aren't representative or even present in what Reform are offering. Instead, they're promising, if you vote the wrong way, or if you happen to live in a constituency that votes the wrong way, to house illegal migrants in your neighbourhood instead. And I'm not voting for that, tomorrow or in any other election, and I don't encourage you do either.